"Keep your eyes lowered and leave by Christmas," the giant cowboy growled through gritted teeth, his calloused hands gripping the porch rail as he turned his back on the trembling black woman clutching a worn Bible in the howling December wind. The territory folk whispered she was cursed, another drifter destined to vanish into the frozen wasteland before spring's first thaw. They watched her with cruel eyes at the general store, certain she'd bring nothing but trouble to any fool desperate enough to shelter her. The mountain man himself seemed carved from the same unforgiving stone as his ranch, a fortress built around a heart shattered by flames and lost 3 years past. Yet beneath his isolation festered a sickness that had already claimed one precious life, and now threatened to consume what remained. But what the cowboy didn't know was that the trembling woman carried secrets that could either destroy them both or heal wounds deeper than winter's bite. Would her hidden knowledge save them before Christmas bells rang? Or would the shadows hunting her burn down everything they touched? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The blizzard hit Pine Ridge territory like God's own fury. Snow whipped across the barren landscape in sheets so thick a man could lose his way between the barn and his front door. Through this white hell, a figure stumbled forward on the mountain road, dark skin against pale snow, torn dress clinging to a frame too thin for winter's bite. Amara Hayes clutched her worn leather Bible against her chest. The pressed flowers inside had long since turned to dust, but she held it like a shield. Each step forward meant another step away from St. Louis, another step away from Vincent Mercer's lies. The Carter Ranch emerged from the storm like a ship in fog. Lamplight flickered in the windows. Smoke rose from the chimney. Salvation, maybe, or just another place to be turned away. She knocked on the heavy oak door with knuckles gone numb from cold. The sound seemed swallowed by wind. Footsteps inside. Heavy boots on wooden floors. The door swung open. Isaiah Carter filled the doorframe. 6 feet of weathered cowboy with shoulders broad as a barn door. Gray streaked his dark hair. Lines carved deep around eyes that had seen too much sorrow. He stared down at her with the warmth of winter stone. "We're closed to visitors. Please." The word escaped as barely a whisper. "I can work, clean, cook, mend, just until Christmas." Those cold eyes studied her, taking measure, finding her wanting. "You running from something?" She met his gaze for just a moment, saw the hardness there, the wall he'd built around whatever heart still beat in his chest. "Aren't we all?" Something flickered across his face. Gone before she could name it. He stepped aside. 6 weeks. Keep to yourself. Earn your keep. And stay out of my study." The warmth hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled inside, legs barely holding her weight. The main room stretched before her. Stone fireplace crackling with life, rough furniture built for function over beauty. Everything clean but cold, like a house that had forgotten how to be a home. "There's a room off the kitchen, meals at dawn and dusk, no exceptions." He turned away before she could thank him. The next morning brought her first glimpse of the ranch hands. 3 men weathered by sun and wind. They moved slow, careful, like old men though none had passed 30. "You the new girl?" The one called Jake eyed her with suspicion mixed with curiosity. She nodded. "Don't expect to last long. Carter don't take to strangers, especially—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. The work came hard and endless. Floors that hadn't seen proper cleaning in years. Windows thick with grime. Clothes that needed mending. She moved through it all like a ghost, invisible unless needed. Carter himself remained distant as mountain peaks. He spoke only when necessary. Instructions given in clipped sentences, never meeting her eyes. But she watched him when he thought no one looked. Saw how he favored his left leg on cold mornings. How his hands trembled sometimes when he thought no one noticed. How he stood longest at the window facing the small cemetery behind the house. 2 graves there, one large, one small. Fresh flowers, even in winter. The ride to town came on her 2nd week. Carter needed supplies. She needed to send a letter. Pine Ridge was barely a town at all. General store, saloon, church, and a handful of houses scattered like afterthoughts, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business. Evelyn Matthews ran the general store with an iron fist and sharper tongue. She looked Amara up and down like something tracked in on a boot. "You'll wait outside." The words hit like winter wind, but Amara nodded, stepped back into the cold, watched through frosted windows as the woman gathered supplies. Other townspeople gathered. Whispers carried on the air. "Strange one, that. Heard she just showed up. Out of nowhere. Mark my words, she'll bring nothing but trouble." Carter emerged 20 minutes later, saw her waiting in the cold. His jaw tightened. They rode back to the ranch in silence. That night she found herself in his study despite the warning. Cleaning meant going everywhere, even forbidden places. Dust motes danced in lamplight as she worked around the massive desk. Papers scattered across its surface. Medical journals, letters from doctors, all bearing the same name, Sarah Carter. She picked up one journal with careful fingers. The handwriting inside was educated, precise. A woman documenting symptoms, treatments tried and failed, growing desperation bleeding through neat lines of ink. The men grow sicker daily. High fever, convulsions, strange visions. Dr. Morrison's bloodletting provides no relief. I fear we're losing them one by one. The final entry was dated 3 years past. "I feel the sickness taking hold in myself now. God protect my beloved husband and sweet James should I not survive to see another dawn." Footsteps in the hallway, heavy boots approaching. Amara slipped the journal back into place, grabbed her cleaning supplies. Carter appeared in the doorway. Those cold eyes swept the room, landed on her. "I thought I told you to stay out. Dust doesn't respect boundaries." Something almost like a smile touched his lips. Gone before she could be certain. "Find everything you needed?" The question carried weight, like he knew exactly what she'd been reading, what she'd discovered. "Yes, sir." He nodded once, turned to leave. Paused. "Sarah was my wife. James was my son. The fire took them both while I was away moving cattle." The words fell into silence heavy as stone. "I'm sorry for your loss. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead." He left her standing there among the ghosts of his past, but for the first time since her arrival, the walls around his heart seemed less solid, less permanent. Outside, wind howled through pine trees, and somewhere in the distance, horse hooves drummed against frozen ground, moving closer. 3 days passed before Amara returned to the study. This time she came with purpose. The medical journals called to her like voices from the grave. She spread Sarah Carter's notes across the desk. Symptom by symptom, treatment by treatment. The pattern emerged clear as mountain air. High fever followed by convulsions. Strange visions that drove men to madness. Then death. But it wasn't plague or consumption. Amara had seen this before. Her grandmother's voice echoed across the years, strong hands guiding small fingers through dried herbs, teaching lessons that meant the difference between life and death. "Child, when the grain turns black and the people start seeing demons, you look for the purple fungus. Devil's bread, some call it. Ergot, to those who know medicine." The ranch hands showed the same early signs. Trembling fingers, headaches that wouldn't break. Jake complained of seeing shadows move when nothing was there. They were dying slowly, just like Sarah and James had died. Amara slipped from the house before dawn. The barn stood silent in gray light. Grain sacks lined one wall in neat rows. She cut into the nearest bag with her kitchen knife. Black kernels scattered into her palm. Twisted shapes that nature never intended. The ergot had taken hold deep in the grain stores, poison disguised as sustenance. She gathered what she needed from the winter garden: willow bark for the fever, chamomile for the visions, yarrow to cleanse the blood. Her grandmother's medicine bag held more treasures, herbs carefully preserved through months of running. The work took hours, grinding roots to powder, steeping leaves in boiling water, mixing compounds that would draw poison from human flesh. Jake found her first, stumbling from the bunkhouse, with sweat beading his pale face. "You're up early." She held out a cup of steaming liquid, dark as coffee but smelling of earth and growing things. "Drink this." "What is it?" "Medicine." He studied her face, searching for deception, finding only certainty. "The boss won't like this. The boss doesn't have to know." Jake took the cup, drained it in 3 swallows, made a face at the bitter taste. "If this kills me, I'm haunting you forever." By evening, his fever had broken. The trembling stopped. Color returned to his cheeks. Tom and Buck came next, then the other hands who'd heard whispers of miracle cures. Each man sworn to secrecy, each man walking proof that old knowledge still held power. But secrets have weight. They press against the keeper until something gives way. Carter found her in the kitchen on the 7th day. She was grinding willow bark with mortar and pestle. The sound echoed like gunshots in the quiet house. Interesting hobby. She didn't look up, kept working the pestle in steady circles. "My grandmother taught me." "Your grandmother was a doctor?" "She was a healer." The distinction mattered. Doctors had certificates and fancy offices. Healers had knowledge passed down through blood and necessity. Carter moved closer, studied the array of herbs covering her workspace. "The men are looking better." Not a question. A statement weighted with understanding. "They stopped eating the grain." "All of it?" "The contaminated stores. Black kernels mixed with good. Ergot poisoning." She finally met his eyes. Saw surprise there, and something deeper. Respect, maybe. Sarah wrote about ergot in her journals, said the doctor dismissed it as nonsense. Doctors dismiss many things they don't understand. Carter picked up a dried root, turned it over in his weathered hands. "Where did you learn all this?" The question she'd been dreading. The one that led back to St. Louis and Vincent Mercer's lies. "My grandmother was born into slavery, learned medicine from necessity. When freedom came, she became the healer for our community, taught me everything before she passed. Truth, but not the whole truth. The safe parts that wouldn't bring questions about why she'd run." She sounds like a remarkable woman. "She saved more lives than any doctor I ever met." Carter set down the root. His expression had shifted, the walls around his heart developing cracks. "You saved my men." "I just did what needed doing." Sarah tried everything. Spent months reading medical books, consulting with specialists. "And you solved it in a week." The weight of his gratitude pressed against her chest. She wasn't used to praise, wasn't sure how to carry it. Sarah was fighting the right battle with the wrong weapons. "And you had the right weapons all along." She nodded, grandmother's knowledge flowing through her hands like water through stone. That night brought visitors. Silas Johnson arrived after dark, hat in his hands and worry creasing his features. Carter's oldest friend carried news that curdled blood. "There's a man been asking questions. Well-dressed fellow from back east. Says he's looking for a thief." Amara's hands stilled on the herbs she'd been sorting. "What kind of questions?" "Description of a woman. Dark skin, traveling alone. Says she stole valuable items from his family." The mortar slipped from her fingers, crashed against the kitchen floor in a shower of ceramic pieces. Carter's eyes found hers across the broken fragments. "Vincent Mercer." The name escaped before she could stop it. Silas nodded grimly. "That's the one. He's been working his way through every town within 50 miles, getting closer." The kitchen fell silent except for wind-rattling windows. Amara knelt to gather the broken pieces. Her hands shook like autumn leaves. "How long do I have?" "He's in Millerville now. 2 days' ride in good weather. 2 days to disappear again, to leave behind the first place that had felt like home since grandmother's death." Carter knelt beside her, helped gather the ceramic fragments. "You don't have to run." "Yes, I do. Not anymore." Their eyes met over the broken mortar. His held something she hadn't seen before, determination mixed with protectiveness, like he was ready to stand between her and the storm. "He has money, influence. People believe his lies. Then we'll have to give them better reasons to believe the truth." Outside, snow began to fall. each flake a countdown toward Judgment Day. The truth came out like poison from a wound. Amara sat at the kitchen table while Carter and Silas waited, her hands folded around the broken pieces of the mortar, each fragment cutting into her palms. I worked for the Mercer family in St. Louis. Vincent was the eldest son. The words felt like stones in her throat. He was handsome, charming to the ladies at social gatherings, but underneath lived something rotten. Carter's jaw tightened. He'd seen that kind of rot before. The other servants warned me, said to never be alone with him, but rich men don't follow rules meant for common folk. Silas shifted in his chair, understanding dawning in his weathered features. He cornered me in the library one evening. His parents were at the opera. The other servants had gone home. She paused, gathered strength from somewhere deep. He said I should be grateful for his attention, said women like me didn't get many offers from men of quality. The memory burned like acid, Vincent's cologne mixing with whiskey breath, his hands grabbing at her dress. I fought him off, broke his nose with a crystal paperweight, left him bleeding on the Persian rug. Carter's hands clenched into fists. Good. He told his parents I'd stolen family heirlooms, claimed I attacked him when he caught me in the act. They called the police before I could even explain. But you got away. Barely. Had 5 minutes to gather my things before they arrived. Been running ever since. The kitchen fell silent. Snow tapped against windows like fingers seeking entry. Silas spoke first. How long ago? 8 months. He's been chasing you for 8 months? The dedication was terrifying. Most men would have given up after a few weeks, moved on to easier prey. Men like Vincent don't accept defeat, especially from someone they consider beneath them. Carter stood, paced to the window, stared out at the gathering storm. He can't take you back on his word alone. He has a warrant, signed papers, looks official to anyone who doesn't know better. Forged? Most likely. But sheriffs don't question wealthy white men from big cities. The bitter truth of it settled over them like ash. Carter turned from the window. His face held the same expression she'd seen when he faced down wild horses. Determined. Unmovable. You're not running anymore. You don't understand what you're up against. I understand plenty. Man who hurts women isn't worth the air he breathes. Silas nodded agreement. Old cowboys had their own code about such things. Question is, what's his real game? Why chase one woman across half the country? Pride, Amara said simply. I made him look weak, drew blood. He can't let that stand. But something in her voice suggested deeper waters, secrets still unspoken. There's more. She hesitated. This part would damn her completely in their eyes. He'd been stealing from his own family for months, selling heirlooms to pay gambling debts. When I escaped, he needed someone to blame for the missing items. The final piece clicked into place. Vincent wasn't just hunting her for revenge. He needed her captured or dead to keep his own crimes hidden. Smart man would have stopped the thefts once he'd blamed them on you. Vincent isn't smart. He's desperate. Carter resumed his pacing, mind working through possibilities. 2 days before he reaches Pine Ridge. Not much time to prepare. I'll be gone by morning. No. The word cut through the air like a blade. This is my land, my home. Nobody gets run off it by some fancy boy from the city. He'll have you arrested too, harboring a fugitive. Let him try. Silas cleared his throat. Might have another option. Been thinking while you two argued. Both turned to face him. What if Vincent Mercer ain't who he claims to be? The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. What do you mean? Rich man's son wouldn't be chasing a single woman across the territory by himself. Would send hired men, private detectives. Stay comfortable at home. Carter caught the thread. Unless he can't risk anyone else knowing the truth. Exactly. Man doing his own dirty work got something to hide. Hope flickered in Amara's chest. Dangerous and fragile. You think you can prove it? Got friends in Denver. Men who know how to ask the right questions. Send some telegrams tonight. That could take weeks. Vincent's 2 days out. Maybe 3 if the storm slows him down. Sometimes you gotta make time work for you instead of against you. Carter moved to stand behind Amara's chair, his presence solid as granite. You stay. We fight this together. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Carter's hand settled on her shoulder, gentle despite the calluses. Because you saved my men when nobody else could. Because you brought healing to a place that had forgotten what it felt like. He paused, gathered courage for words that came harder than any others. Because I care what happens to you. The admission changed everything, shifted the ground beneath their feet. Isaiah, his name on her lips like a prayer. I care too. That's why I have to go. No. We face this storm together or not at all. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the pines like some wild thing seeking shelter. The same storm that would slow Vincent's approach was trapping them all in place. Silas stood, pulled on his heavy coat. I'll get those telegrams sent tonight. Start stirring up some questions about our visitor. He paused at the door. Girls got more courage than sense, staying to fight. But sometimes that's exactly what the world needs. The door closed behind him with a sound like fate sealing shut. Carter knelt beside Amara's chair, met her eyes with his own. Whatever comes, you don't face it alone anymore. She nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. For the first time in 8 months, she wasn't running. The real battle was about to begin. Dawn brought more than light. Silas returned with telegram responses clutched in his frost-bitten fingers. His horse steamed in the cold air as he dismounted. Got some interesting news from Denver. Carter and Amara met him on the porch. Neither had slept much. The weight of waiting pressed down like storm clouds. Vincent Mercer's been busy back home. Real busy. Silas unfolded the first telegram. Read it aloud. Mercer family business facing bankruptcy. Missing funds estimated at $20,000. Vincent Mercer wanted for questioning by St. Louis police. The paper crackled in the morning air. Amara's breath caught. There's more. The second telegram painted an uglier picture. 3 women had come forward with similar stories, all former servants, all describing the same pattern of assault and false accusations. He's done this before. Multiple times. Always the same story. Claims they stole something valuable. Always happens right after they fight him off. Carter's face darkened like an approaching storm. How many women? That we know of? 5, including Amara. Probably more who were too scared to speak up. The third telegram held the most damning evidence. Bank records showing Vincent had been systematically draining family accounts for over a year. The stolen heirlooms Amara was accused of taking had been sold months before she ever worked for the family. He needed a scapegoat, someone to blame for the missing money and jewelry. And when I escaped, it left him exposed. Silas nodded grimly. Desperate men do desperate things, which is why he's been chasing you across half the country. The sound of hoofbeats interrupted their planning. A rider approached from town, Sheriff Bradley's deputy, face grim with official business. Morning, folks. Sheriff needs to see you in town. All of you. What's this about, Tommy? Vincent Mercer's arrived, says he's got a federal warrant for the arrest of Amara Hayes. The words hit like winter wind, cold and cutting deep. Federal warrant? Came on the morning train. Got papers signed by a judge in St. Louis. Sheriff says it looks legitimate. Carter stepped closer to Amara, protective without being obvious. When does he want to see us? Now. Vincent Mercer's making quite a stir. Got half the town believing his story already. The ride to Pine Ridge felt like a funeral procession. Amara sat straight in the saddle despite the fear eating at her insides. Carter flanked her left side. Silas took the right. A show of support that didn't go unnoticed. Vincent Mercer waited in the sheriff's office like a spider in its web, tall and handsome in an expensive coat. gold watch chain glinting in the lamplight. Everything about him screamed wealth and authority. His nose showed signs of old breakage, a reminder of their last encounter. "Sheriff Bradley, I believe you have my fugitive." Vincent's voice carried the smooth confidence of privilege, eyes that had never known real hardship. "This is a serious matter, Mr. Mercer. Federal charges require careful handling." Sheriff Bradley studied the paperwork, a good man caught between duty and doubt. "The warrant seems legitimate, signed by Judge Morrison in St. Louis. Of course it's legitimate. I wouldn't travel this far for a simple misunderstanding." Vincent's gaze fixed on Amara, predatory and cold. "Hello, Amara. You've led me quite a chase." She met his stare without flinching. 8 months of running had burned away the frightened girl he remembered. "Mr. Mercer, I trust you're ready to return and face justice for your crimes." Carter stepped forward, voice steady as bedrock. "What crimes exactly?" "Theft of family heirlooms valued at over $5,000. Assault upon my person when confronted with the evidence." The lies rolled off his tongue smooth as silk, practiced from months of repetition. "Funny thing about those heirlooms." Silas pulled out the telegrams, spread them across the sheriff's desk. "Turns out they were sold 6 months before Miss Hayes ever worked for your family." Vincent's confidence flickered, just for a moment. "I don't know what game you're playing, but forged documents won't save a thief. These came direct from the St. Louis Police Department, along with some interesting information about your family's business affairs." Sheriff Bradley picked up the telegrams, read through them slowly, his expression growing more troubled with each line. "Says here you're wanted for questioning about missing funds. Lies spread by business competitors. I'm the victim here, not the criminal." But sweat beaded on Vincent's forehead despite the winter cold. "What about these other women? Similar accusations against multiple former servants. Disturbed individuals seeking attention. You know how their kind can be." The casual dismissal revealed his true nature. Sheriff Bradley's eyes hardened. "Their kind?" Vincent realized his mistake too late, the mask slipping to show the rot underneath. "I simply meant that some people are prone to wild fantasies, especially when money is involved." Amara found her voice, steady and clear. "Sheriff, I have something to say." All eyes turned to her, the moment she'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. "Vincent Mercer attacked me in his family's library. When I fought back and escaped, he needed someone to blame for his own crimes." "That's preposterous. I broke his nose with a crystal paperweight. You can still see where it healed crooked." Vincent's hand moved instinctively to his face, covering the evidence of her words. "She's lying, obviously coached by these men to create doubt." "Then you won't mind if we send some telegrams of our own. Verify your story with the St. Louis authorities." "That's unnecessary. I have all the documentation required." "Course you do. Question is whether that documentation will hold up under scrutiny." The web of lies began unraveling like cheap cloth, Vincent's composed facade cracking under pressure. "I demand you arrest this woman immediately. I have a valid warrant." Sheriff Bradley studied the papers again, looking for flaws he'd missed the first time. "Tell you what, Mr. Mercer, we'll hold Miss Hayes pending investigation, but I'm sending my own inquiries back east. Make sure everything's above board." Vincent's jaw tightened. This wasn't going according to plan. "How long will that take?" "Week or 2? Depends on how fast the wires work." "Unacceptable. I have business to attend to back home." "Then maybe you should have brought better proof." The standoff stretched like a drawn bowstring, Vincent realizing his careful plans were falling apart. Carter spoke into the silence. "Awful long way to travel for one servant girl. Most men would send hired help." The observation hit its mark. Vincent's composure slipped another notch. Some matters require personal attention. Or maybe some secrets can't be trusted to strangers. The truth hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Everyone could smell it. The telegram that shattered Vincent's world arrived 3 days later. Sheriff Bradley read it twice before calling everyone back to his office. The morning sun cast long shadows through frost-covered windows. Vincent sat rigid in his chair. The expensive coat couldn't hide the tremor in his hands. 3 days of waiting had worn his confidence to bone. Got some interesting responses from St. Louis. Sheriff Bradley's voice carried the weight of final judgment. Judge Morrison says he never signed any warrant for Amara Hayes. Says his signature was forged. The words hit like hammer blows. Vincent's face went pale as winter snow. That's impossible. I have the original documents. You have forgeries. Good ones, but still fake. Silas leaned back in his chair, satisfaction written across his weathered features. Gets better. St. Louis police confirmed they issued a warrant for Vincent Mercer 2 weeks ago. Fraud, theft, and falsifying legal documents. The net closed around Vincent like a trap, his careful lies crumbling to dust. There's also this. Sheriff Bradley held up another telegram, read it slowly. 3 more women came forward after word got out, all telling the same story, all former Mercer family employees. Vincent shot to his feet, chair clattering backward. This is orchestrated persecution. These people are conspiring against me. 8 women telling identical stories? That's not conspiracy, son. That's pattern. Amara stood. Every eye in the room turned to her. This moment had been coming since the day she'd run from St. Louis. I'd like to say something. Her voice carried clear and strong. No more trembling. No more fear. Vincent Mercer is a predator. He uses his family's wealth and position to hurt women who can't fight back. You're lying. I broke your nose when you tried to force yourself on me. The scar's still crooked where it healed wrong. Vincent's hand moved instinctively to his face. The gesture confirmed her words better than any testimony. When I escaped, you needed someone to blame for the money you'd stolen, the jewelry you'd sold to pay gambling debts. Prove it. Bank records already did. You sold those heirlooms 6 months before I ever worked for your family. The truth hung in the air like cordite after gunfire, heavy and inescapable. Sheriff Bradley stood, hand resting on his gun belt. Vincent Mercer, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and assault. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Got warrants from 3 different jurisdictions now. Vincent backed toward the door, desperation replacing arrogance. You're all making a terrible mistake. My family has influence, connections. Your family disowned you 2 days ago. Got a telegram from your father. Says you're no longer welcome in St. Louis. The final blow. Vincent's legs gave out. He collapsed into the overturned chair like a puppet with cut strings. This can't be happening. Should have thought of that before you decided to hurt innocent women. Carter moved to Amara's side, placed a steady hand on her shoulder. It's over. She nodded. 8 months of running, 8 months of looking over her shoulder. Finally ended. What happens now? Vincent gets shipped back east to face trial. You get to live your life. The words felt foreign, strange. She'd been running so long that freedom seemed impossible. Sheriff Bradley finished reading Vincent his rights. The man who'd terrorized her across half the country looked small and broken, age lines showing through expensive pomade. One thing I don't understand. Sheriff Bradley looked at Amara. Why not come forward sooner? Report what happened. The question every person of her background faced. Why suffer in silence instead of seeking justice? Who would have believed me? A servant's word against a wealthy white man's son. The bitter truth settled over the room. Even good men like Sheriff Bradley understood the reality. Things are changing, slowly, but they're changing. Not fast enough for most of us. Carter squeezed her shoulder, understanding without words. The crowd outside had been growing all morning. Word spread fast in small towns. Half of Pine Ridge wanted to see the conclusion of their drama. Vincent was led away in shackles, head down, dignity stripped away like old paint. Some townspeople shouted insults. Others watched in stunned silence. Evelyn Matthews pushed through the crowd, the same woman who'd made Amara wait outside in the cold. Her face carried shame like a visible burden. "Miss Hayes." Amara turned, surprised to be addressed directly. "I owe you an apology. Several apologies." The words came hard, bitter as medicine. "We all do." Other voices joined in, people who'd whispered cruel rumors, made assumptions based on fear and prejudice. You saved the Carter Ranch hands, brought healing when the doctors failed, showed more grace than we deserved. The crowd murmured agreement, a community reckoning with its own failures. Carter stepped forward, voice carrying across the gathered faces. "Amara Hayes is the finest woman I've ever known. She's got more courage, wisdom, and compassion than the rest of us combined." He turned to face her, eyes holding everything he'd never said. "She's also agreed to be my wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd, surprise mixing with approval. "If you'll have us, Pine Ridge, we'd like to call this place home." The cheer that erupted shook snow from the buildings, months of tension releasing in pure joy. Silas grinned like a man half his age. "About time you two figured that out." Amara felt tears on her cheeks, happy tears for the first time in longer than memory. "When's the wedding?" "Christmas Eve." Carter's answer surprised even her. "That's tomorrow. Been waiting too long already. Don't intend to waste another day." The crowd surged forward, congratulations and well wishes drowning out the winter wind. For the first time since leaving St. Louis, Amara felt truly safe, truly home. The healing had begun. Christmas Eve morning dawned clear and cold. The storm had passed, leaving Pine Ridge blanketed in fresh snow that sparkled like scattered diamonds. Amara stood at the kitchen window, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. Today she would become Mrs. Isaiah Carter. The thought still felt impossible. 6 weeks ago she'd arrived broken and running. Now she was about to marry the man who'd taught her what safety felt like. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Evelyn Matthews stood on the porch, arms full of white fabric. "Brought you something." The dress was simple but beautiful, clean lines and honest stitching, the kind of gown meant for new beginnings. "It was my daughter's. She'd want you to have it." The gesture carried weight beyond the fabric, acceptance where once there'd been suspicion. "Thank you." "No, Miss Hayes, thank you for showing us what grace looks like." Other women followed throughout the morning, bringing flowers from winter gardens, offering help with hair and preparations. The same community that had whispered cruel rumors now embraced her like family. Carter spent the morning at the cemetery behind the house, kneeling beside 2 graves in the snow, having the conversation he'd avoided for 3 years. "Sarah, I know this seems sudden, but she's brought healing to places I thought were dead forever." The wind through the pines sounded almost like whispers, like blessing carried on winter air. "She saved our men when I couldn't. Saved me too, in ways I'm still understanding." He placed fresh flowers on both graves, white roses for Sarah, wildflowers for little James. "I'll always love you both, but I think it's time to live again." The church filled early despite the cold. Ranch hands scrubbed clean and wearing their Sunday best, townspeople who'd never spoken to Amara before arriving with genuine smiles. Silas stood beside Carter at the altar, best man and witness to transformation. His weathered face creased with joy. "Never seen you this nervous facing down bulls. Bulls don't make life-changing decisions. Neither do you, usually. That's what makes this special." The church doors opened. Amara appeared in borrowed white, carrying wildflowers picked from her own winter garden. The same hands that had ground healing herbs now held symbols of new growth. Carter's breath caught. She looked like everything he'd never dared hope for. She walked the aisle alone. No father to give her away, no family to witness her joy, but the entire community rose as she passed. Silent testimony to worth measured in character, not blood. Pastor Williams opened his worn Bible, the same book that had blessed unions for 20 years in Pine Ridge. "Dearly beloved, we gather today to witness the union of Isaiah Carter and Amara Hayes." The words echoed in the small church, simple and eternal, Marriage is not entered into lightly. It requires commitment, understanding, and the courage to face whatever storms may come. Carter and Amara had already weathered their storm, survived the trial by fire that proved their love genuine. Isaiah, do you take Amara to be your wife, to love, honor, and protect through all the days of your life? I do. His voice carried absolute certainty. No doubt, no reservation. Amara, do you take Isaiah to be your husband, to love, honor, and stand beside through all the days of your life? I do. The words came clear and strong. A woman who'd found her voice and her home. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. The kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise sealed with tenderness. The celebration lasted until midnight, music and laughter filling the church hall, stories shared around tables groaning with food, a community celebrating love's victory over fear. Jake raised his glass of cider. To Mrs. Carter, the woman who saved our lives and showed us what real strength looks like. The toast was echoed throughout the hall, voices joining in gratitude and respect. Later, alone in their home, Amara and Carter sat before the fireplace, the same room where he'd first delivered his harsh ultimatum, now transformed into sanctuary. No regrets? She smiled at the question. The same doubt that had plagued him for weeks. Only that we wasted so much time being scared. I told you to keep your eyes lowered and leave by Christmas. Good thing I never learned to follow orders. He laughed, the sound rusher than she'd ever heard, joy replacing the grief that had haunted him for years. What now? Now we build something together. The ranch, our life, a family if we're blessed. The future stretched before them like an unwritten book, pages waiting to be filled with shared dreams. Spring came early that year. By March, word had spread throughout the territory about the healing woman at the Carter Ranch. Travelers arrived seeking remedies for ailments that traditional medicine couldn't touch. Amara treated them all, rich and poor, every color and creed, her grandmother's wisdom flowing through gentle hands. The ranch prospered beyond anyone's expectations, not just from cattle and crops, but from the stream of grateful people who found healing in an unlikely place. A letter arrived from St. Louis in April. Vincent Mercer had been sentenced to 10 years for fraud and assault. Justice finally served, though it came too late for most of his victims. Amara read the letter once and burned it in the fireplace. The past was ash. Only the future mattered now. On a warm evening in late spring, she and Carter walked to the cemetery behind their house. 2 new graves had been added. An elderly couple who'd found peace in their final days thanks to Amara's care. Grandmother would be proud. Carter squeezed her hand. She raised an extraordinary woman. We all rise or fall based on who believes in us. The words carried truth deeper than philosophy. Love had transformed 2 broken people into something stronger than either could achieve alone. As summer approached, Amara began showing signs of the blessing they'd hoped for. New life growing where once there'd been only loss. The woman who'd arrived in winter's storm had become the heart of a community. The healing she'd brought to one ranch spread like ripples across still water. Pine Ridge would never be the same. Neither would she.